Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bracket Up, where we get through the mundane, the slightly less mundane. Today, we're probably on the scale of very, very mundane. We are going to be reviewing the worst decade to be born in,
The
starting with the
best.
1900s. Oh, balls. Best. Okay, well, hey, that's good. The best decade to be born in, starting with the 1900s, all the way up to the current 2020s. Threw them into a bracket, randomized it. A couple of ones got first round buys. We're going to figure out the best decade to be born in. As usual, I'll go ahead and introduce everybody, and then we shall get started. We're going to try and make this the quickest episode of Bracket Up we've recorded. I think that's a good plan today.
Fat chance.
Okay. All right. Well, there's an arguing to be doing here.
Maybe.
All right. Well, the argument guy over there, the Sultan of Saganaki. It's Andy Munson. How are you, Andy?
I'm good. I don't have anything to say. I'm the Sultan of Saganaki.
You enjoy your Saganaki. I'm handy dandy Andy Jarrett, as always. Underneath me is the Hollow Knight, Dave Holloway. Haha, it's a shit pun, but a good game. How are you, Dave?
I've never played it. I actually intend to, but I just never got around to.
I was just thinking of random things we could fit in with names today. We need new nicknames. It's been 30 weeks. And then underneath Dave is Julian, the Giggle Snort Hotel. It was a TV show, Julian Griffin. It was a weird TV show with puppets.
I've never heard of that.
He doesn't like it.
But I'm going to look it up today, actually. Thank you. But
like in the late 70s.
I think this is going to be an exciting podcast. Really interesting. But yeah, let's see how it turns out.
All right, well, I'm glad you're confident about this one. I'm super happy about that. So our very first matchup is going to pit the 1960s against the 1990s. So I guess being born in one of these decades,
yeah.
Generally, well, yeah, all of us were born in the 90s. We're all 90 or 91, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're all in a very, very short period of time here. I loved the 90s.
I also
like being born just before cell phones and smartphones became a necessity in life. It was
90s was fun. I have a bias to the 90s. I'm also one of those people who just like everything. Like, hey, that came from the 90s. Now I like it.
We can tell by your shoes.
Yeah. And my Pokemon
the last
shirt.
decade before the internet consumed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an interesting decade. Very interesting.
I mean,
I don't have nothing to say about the 90s, man. What's crazy to me is like you have all these nostalgia heads that swear to God they remember the 90s. My sister was born in 85, so she remembers the 90s. I don't remember shit aside from cartoons.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it felt like a simpler time, but you know, Gulf War happened in the 90s.
Motherfucking 3-strike rules came out in the 90s. Like, I was 2 years old when Rodney King got beat the fuck up. I don't remember that.
But I remember Pokemon. Pokemania.
Yeah, I remember that.
Hey, man. And that was fun. And
yeah,
I don't think you'll ever see such a shared experience again. Because now there's so many options that, like, Game of Thrones is like the closest thing to a shared experience, and that didn't end well. That didn't end well at all.
No, it didn't. Tupac and Biggie got killed in the 90s. That was sad.
They cloned sheep in the 90s.
They did.
O.J. Simpson murder trial.
Hey, gloves don't fit.
I remember asking my mom what that was about. I'm like, what is that? And she was like, why is everybody so angry yet so happy? And she's just like, oh, it's just a bunch of white people being angry that OJ got away with a woman. I was like, oh.
I don't know
toddler me not knowing what the fuck any of that means. I'm like, oh, whatever. I just want to go play Ninja Turtles. Thank God for Sega Genesis.
This is a reminder that he had a prank show where he pranked people.
OJ?
Oh my God.
He's got a rap song for the intro that is horrible that I will relink everybody so they can suffer.
Oh, and we're already talking about the best TV intro of all time, part 2. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
For some reason, I remember reading the book that Detective Mark Furman put out when I was like 12 and knew nothing about the OJ trial, but it's just this book about murder and detectives and shit. Not appropriate for a 12-year-old.
Probably not.
It
Pretty
happened
grisly
in
and
the 90s.
serious. I don't know why that's like my only memory of the OJ trial. It was like 8 years after it happened.
Yeah, I mean, everything I know about the OJ trial, it wasn't because I was watching the OJ trial.
Yeah.
That's true. Hey, let's talk about the 60s for a few minutes.
Oh.
They had Vietnam.
Vietnam.
Yeah, Vietnam. But here's the thing with war. So we mentioned Gulf War in the 90s, Vietnam in the 60s. If you were born in the 90s or 60s, you weren't participating in the Vietnam War. It was going on, but you were probably blind to its effects until you got older. I mean,
most of your memories would probably be in the 70s if you were born in the 60s.
I mean, my dad was 61. He doesn't talk too much about the 60s.
You know, that depends though on where you're born. If you're born in America, sure, the Vietnam War is not affecting you. But if you're born in Vietnam,
Oh shit!
it's
Yeah.
I forgot this goes on the internet. Anyone can listen. But also, a lot of people in Vietnam would have a hard time understanding since we're speaking English.
I'm sure that's probably the second language there. I mean, English is very worldwide.
But what else happened in the 60s?
Most people,
Explosion.
yeah.
I mean, we landed on the moon, or so most normal people believe.
Most people probably don't know about the Stonewall riots, but that's why we have the modern day gay pride parade. It's actually on the anniversary of the riot.
Rolling Stone published its first magazine. My
gosh.
I just got a list of things. Oh, first Super Bowl was in 1967.
Great.
And it was just as uneventful as current Super Bowls, with the Packers winning 35-10.
Yeah, the Selma March to Montgomery was in 1965. The March on Washington, 1963. A lot of revolutionary shit. The Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. Like a lot of rights and lots of bills were passed that help people who are marginalized, which is dope.
There's also the 25th Amendment was ratified then, which should have been used and wasn't recently.
Kennedy assassination.
Oh yeah,
got assassinated in the 60s and 70s.
You know, 60s is known for being like the hippie era. A lot of sad things though happening.
No,
in the
I'd see it as more of a radical era.
Yeah, it's a lot of progress happens in the 60s.
A lot of progress happened in the 60s. So
again, without the Stonewall riots, like we wouldn't have the modern day gay pride movement. So,
but then there's also a war. We're also going through the Cold War. I'm pretty sure Bay of Pigs was in the 60s.
Yeah, but then you also have MLK and women's liberation and stuff like that. So,
but then MLK assassination also.
Well, yeah, because it's still the 60s.
President assassination. I look at the 60s as it's progressive, but also a lot of assassinations, a lot of war.
That's what like a revolution is. Revolution is messy, it's dirty, and people get killed in order to
I don't. Change. But Vietnam, really, I wouldn't call revolution.
That wasn't really revolution. That was more like.
I don't think there was any sort of good revolution that came out of assassinating Kennedy. I look at the 60s as kind of rough to be born into, not understanding what's going on.
That's true.
I mean, like, I will say 60s is like the first decade where I'm like, okay, this is better than before.
I mean, whatever moves on here is going up against the 30s, and I don't think anyone wants to live in the 30s.
In the roaring 30s?
I'm gonna vote for the 90s. Just feels like a good nostalgic / little easier time to be born for everyone.
I mean, listen, the bias is extremely heavy on the 90s. So.
The bias is extremely heavy.
And like as progressive as the 60s were, the 90s are still a better spot to be in that regard. So
I'm also going to vote 90s.
Yeah.
I'll throw a pity vote to the 60s. All right, so they're moving on. The 90s are at least. Next up, that's the 2020s against the 1970s. So people born in the last year and 3 months against the 1970s.
I'd hate to be born this year in this decade.
Vietnam was still going on, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy my niece was born.
Well, yeah. Great your niece is born. Wouldn't you wish she was born not in the 2020s?
Well, no,
You said
I'm
that,
glad
not
she's
something
here.
worse.
No, why not? Why would I be upset that she's born now? I'm happy to have my niece.
Yeah, but well, okay.
If you're gonna ask me if would I rather her be born like in the 2020s or like back in, let's say, the 1930s,
no.
I would much rather fucking pick now.
In the 1930s.
You wouldn't be your niece anymore, Julian.
Yeah.
No, would I rather have my niece be born
in the beautiful 1990s? Well, let's talk about what's happened in the 2020s. There's a pandemic.
Yeah, but we also got rid of Trump, so there you go.
Yeah.
Can we focus on like at least the positive of the 2020s so far?
Go on, lay it on me. Other than your niece being born.
TikTok.
Yeah, there we go. Communication is much easier. People are starting to become more aware of women's issues, about racial issues.
I mean,
trans issues.
I think a lot of these issues, though, the people who have been aware of them were aware of them previously. And
yeah, of course, because the people affected by it are most aware. Like,
yeah, that's true. But
I'm talking about the general.
Who are being, the general population. A lot more people are more vocal.
Like literally, just look at the reaction to Black Lives Matter in 2016 versus 2020. It's the night and day, like extremely different.
I suppose.
Exactly.
But then
let's talk about Trump. In 2020, everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is it. He's getting out of office. He's getting out of office."
And then they stormed the Capitol.
It exposed so much about the country. Now it's like now we see all of these issues, and now we see all of these problems that have to be addressed. Because before then, nobody was really talking about it as much. Like just like Dave said, 2016 compared to 2020, it's literally night and day.
I suppose, but there's just so much voice, a strong voice against all the progression, and
sure, but those people existed previously. They just weren't as loud about it.
I think more exist now because it's so loud. I think people have joined up with these radical groups because they think it's supporting the conservative party. I mean,
Well, when we get to the 1930s, I can historically you can see that there's a huge difference. Yeah, we see a lot of violence, but do we often talk about the massacres that happened in what was it in what was the
this has become a very political episode.
I'm talking about Tulsa, Alabama, but what I'm saying
I was just gonna say
you have a bunch of massacres that happened prior to the 1950s against any marginalized group, and it was shoved under the rug. It was extremely violent back then.
It was shoved under the rug, or it was praised.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like now you have a lot more people that are connected who actually can see okay, this is bad, this is wrong. And then the younger generation, the generation younger than us, they're more vocal than we ever were.
But if we're talking about connection, it's also the spread of so much false information because of the connectivity as well.
There's always
That
been
was happening more in the previous decade, though, than this
Yeah, but
decade.
now we're talking like if we get off just social or civil issues, then you're going to talk about people are anti-science now and distrusting like
People have always been.
Oh my
Anti-vax
God.
has been a movement since the 90s.
Since before then, the church has been a huge because like that there were people saying the same exact thing like when cigarettes and tobacco was in heavy use, you had doctors who in the medical field saying there is a link to cancer and smoking cigarettes. And back then, you would have looked at a person like that. You're fucking crazy. That's stupid. There's no way that the cigarettes give you lung cancer. And then decades later, it's proven. There's always naysayers.
End of the 80s with AIDS, where people were, even though science was saying like, yeah, you can hug people, like like that's not a problem. People were still insistent and like extremely bigoted, like.
I guess it's
towards
very,
anyone that had AIDS, like.
It's just
very. You had churchgoers who would literally say, "Oh, you can only get AIDS if you're gay. If you're gay, it was simply just a gay thing." Gay and
science was never on their side in that, so.
Exactly. So,
but then you also gotta like we're going through a pandemic, and now it's the anti-science is huge.
Hey, if you're born in the 2020s, you don't got to worry about the pandemic, probably, most likely.
Yeah,
sure.
You know what? That's a good
Can't
point.
Can't say for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Can't say for sure, but
we'll be pretty confident that by the time their 2030s rolls around, I think everything will be fine. Because if we're talking like 1990s, we probably remember more of the 2000s. You gotta think 10 years in the future. So being born in the 2020s,
yeah. I mean, who knows what the hellscape is of the next 10 years? But I mean,
You know what? You've convinced me. What happened in the 70s?
Pong.
Cool.
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Like
shit, man.
Watergate.
That we enjoy today came from, a lot of pop culture that we enjoy today came from the 70s. The 70s was the start.
And yeah, it is pretty much the start of video games.
Video games.
Listen, that 70s show was based in the 70s.
What?
Huh?
Disco.
Yeah, but I mean,
all different types of music, hip hop, rap started in the 70s.
Vietnam ended in the 70s as well as continued into the 70s, but it also ended there.
It also started the crack epidemic, though.
Boy, this is like a sad episode. Let's talk about all the shit that happened. Also, very political episode.
Yeah, well.
Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes, the famous tennis match. It's cool. It's good stuff.
Was it like 70s? That was Muhammad Ali, right? That was
Muhammad Ali
era of dominance
in the 60s.
But he
dominated for a long time. Like he came out, he emerged in the 60s. He was big in the 60s, but then I think his career got screwed up because he refused to fight in the Vietnam War, and he ended up going to jail for it. And his career suffered because of that. So he wasn't able to pick up. He wasn't nearly as fast as I could talk boxing all day. Don't get me started, please.
Well, that's why I got you started, because I know you like boxing.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali, like he before then he was just different. He was just like people are looking at him like, holy crap, this is the guy. This is that guy. He was fast. For his size, he was so fast, so confident, and he was hated because he was the type of dude that will talk shit about their opponent and be able to back it up too. That's why everybody hated him.
I should have brought Muhammad Ali up in the 60s. For some reason, I thought he was late 60s. He was 1960.
70s was the last time 70s was the last time we had a man on the moon.
That's true.
Well, normal people believe.
Anti-science. How do we know?
Well, that's why when I say anti-science, it ain't just vaccines. It's everything.
Yeah.
That's where I
First
have a
of all-
problem.
That's also not new. That's an old ass conspiracy theory. So
I know. I know. Oh man,
First-
Muhammad Ali
You
went.
just have to understand. You just have to accept that vaccines are evil. The Earth is flat. Okay.
Earth is flat.
Look
I
at
did have a
Muhammad-
resurgence
okay.
recently.
Look, Muhammad Ali. I said I
Tom
should have
Cruise
brought him
is
up
totally
in the
right.
60s.
Scientology. I can't wait for Lord Xenu to come back. Okay.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali did well in the 70s. Hell,
Yeah,
you know
He
what?
did.
most famous fights were probably in the 70s.
You know what? Then I was right to bring him up here.
They fought over 300s. Dudes and beats.
Man, but
Don't say
born in the.
Garfield.
But if we look at it, you were born in the 70s. You know what though? With sports, it's different because I was born in the 90s. A lot of my favorite players were players from the 90s because that's where you grow to love the sport young. So yeah, bringing up Muhammad Ali now, sure, you probably don't remember a lot if you're born in the 70s about the 70s, but you'll remember Muhammad Ali.
Well, that he transcended sports too, with his, going to jail for 3 years and not fighting over not wanting to get drafted to fight in Vietnam. That shit was national news every day. And just changing his name, Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, and becoming a Muslim. Like,
Yeah. What am I gonna vote for?
he had Garfield, the first Garfield comic strip, June 13th, 1978.
All right, I'm voting 70s. Garfield, baby. Without Garfield, you don't have Garfield Cat or whatever that weird video Dave showed
Or
us.
Garfield minus Garfield.
What was the other?
70s. I want to go 70s because I want to be a part of the rap scene because it was dope.
I mean, you could be
I
a
would
part of the
definitely
rap scene
wanna be a
now.
part
What's
of the
holding you
hip-hop
back?
scene.
What's holding you back now?
It's too politicized and it's not as fun anymore. Everybody's always angry at each other.
I was gonna say I'd rather be in the rap scene now than the rap scene in the 90s, though.
Well, that depends. Oh, actually, that's true. 'Cause I
That
remember people
depends.
used to
The
ask
two
me
biggest
all the
rappers
time,
got
"You
shot."
like, babe? Do you like Tupac?" It was so. It was so.
Yeah, you
visceral.
like
It-
Biggie or you like Tupac, and they both got shot. So
And it was sad too because it was just like there was really no need to perpetuate this East Coast versus West Coast, but people really took that too serious, and it ended up a lot of people, not just besides them, ended up getting hurt over a beef that had nothing to do with them, which is fucking crazy to me.
which is why I say, I mean, you say I vote for 70s because I could join the rap scene, but you could vote for now and just join the rap scene now.
Well, no, because it was fun back then. It wasn't super politicized, and it was just meant to be just something that was fun to do. Because hip hop started just a bunch of kids that went to basement parties and decided to just experiment with music and dance. That's essentially what hip hop is, or was. So I think that just, to me, it sounds fun. Nowadays, you can enjoy rap, but everybody's got a goddamn opinion. You can't enjoy anything. I like Cardi B. Well, Cardi B she's evil and she's bad and she's disrespectful to women. And it's just like, can I please just enjoy a fucking song without having your goddamn opinion?
Actually, if we're gonna talk music, I think rock really also took a big step forward in the 70s too.
The 70s, like,
Yeah,
rock took off.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a little late for me to introduce my new voting criteria, but I'm gonna vote the 70s because Mecha Godzilla. So
Ooh, that's good criteria.
also
That's good
2020s. It's
criteria.
still too early to say.
Yeah,
I
I'm voting 70s.
sure. I'll
For the
give
record,
some
60s
confidence.
had Mothra, so that was a point for the 60s that I missed.
what was yours, Jared?
I'll give a point to the 2020s. I'll be optimistic for the future. All right, next up, the 2000s versus the 2010s. Who bracketed this shit?
I
Who
shuffled.
randomized this?
I randomized it, baby. I hit randomize 3 times and went with whatever it was.
All right.
Look, I don't even know if 2010s has an identity. But the 2020s the knots,
yes.
I guess it is,
2000.
killed the weird extreme vibe of the 90s. So I don't like them.
I mean, we grew up in the 2000s, man. Come on, like you can't hate on it.
I mean, Oh, what happened in the 2000s? I graduated high school.
I watched a shitload of Comedy Central.
Me
9/11.
too. Comedy
9/11.
Central Presents was the shit.
9/11.
Yeah.
The Iraq War.
Yeah, I remember that being scary.
The,
I was
bad,
young.
the bad US 2004 Godzilla film came out.
Boo! 2000s looking worse and worse.
Wait, I thought that was 1999. The bad.
It was, but I mean, we're gonna put that in the 2000s now.
Might have been the first time.
I'm
Are you
not
sure?
counting that shit.
Yeah.
I am not counting that. It came out in 1999.
Yeah.
I remember seeing
All right,
it now.
2 of the 3 Star Wars prequels came out in the 2000s.
Listen,
And they were good shit.
Gojipedia then is wrong because it says that first appeared in the 2004 Godzilla film. Oh no, sorry, they're talking about Godzilla Final Wars, which is where he got
it's
his ass.
1998.
But no, Godzilla with
Yeah,
Matthew Broderick,
yeah.
that came out in 99.
Yeah, that was
98.
I know the one you're talking about.
Okay, so good
Oh,
year
yeah,
because
you're
that's when
right.
he got killed. So
Excuse me, she, because we found out that
She.
Godzilla was a she and could
It's
give
true.
birth.
it's true.
What else happened in the 2000s? We almost skipped over 9/11, but without Dominic here to make a
Samurai Jack.
joke. I mean,
Wait, did Samurai Jack come out in 2000s?
no.
I think so.
Oh, did it?
Sure.
I think Samurai Jack came out in 2000s.
Definitely at that
Dipset
edge
came
if
out.
it came out.
What else? Need for Speed
Yeah,
Underground.
2001.
2001.
I mean, just video
GameCube.
games. The PS2, the Xbox, the GameCube, all coming out around the same time.
And let me tell you,
2001.
GameCube's hot now. Those prices skyrocketed in the pandemic.
I got Dolphin.
Fuck that. I'm a physical guy.
Fuck you. I like my free shit.
It's probably the best route to go for GameCube these days.
See, I'm not gonna lie. Dolphin's probably gonna get really popular. Then I'm gonna have to pay for a premium subscription, and please don't do that. Dolphin creators, let me have my free games that I enjoy. I want to play my Mario Kart Double Dash for free.
Also, best Pokemon games, in my opinion, came out in the 2000s with Gold, Silver, Crystal.
That's true. Some good Pokemon games came out though.
Ruby Sapphire.
The
Oh
Boondocks.
God,
came
if
out.
we're gonna do that, I think all the way to Gen 5 is 2000s.
Michael Jackson's trial for child molestation again.
Oh, yeah.
R. Kelly's trial for child molestation.
In the 2010s.
And
Wasn't that
no,
2000?
it was 2008.
But
I think it was either 2006 or 2008. 4, 6, or 8. One of those 3 years.
Yeah, but in the late 2010s, he was tried again for
Yeah.
bad R. Kelly through the
No,
20
that's
years.
crazy. R. Kelly's been like molesting children since the 90s.
Fuck R. Kelly.
That's like 4 decades of that kind of shit.
Fuck R. Kelly.
Fuck R.
The
Kelly.
housing crisis.
Oh God, that's true. We're over here
Arrested Development, though.
we're over here talking about all the fun things, and Jared's like
Spider-Man
9/11, the housing crisis.
Everybody
Also,
realizing that the Y2K bug was just bullshit.
Yeah.
Pokemon Black and White's 2010.
Oh, that's okay.
So-
Black and White. I'm not a huge fan. I know a lot of
It's,
people are,
yeah.
but I'm not a huge
Oh,
fan
no,
of Black
man.
and White.
And one of my favorite artists came out, Soldier Boy.
In the
Soldier
20,
Boy had a dream once.
I was gonna say in the 2010s, Soldier Boy making video game consoles.
And stealing Nintendo games and putting that shit on there.
Really, what he's doing is he's taking bootleg consoles and then just renaming them and selling them.
I'm like, they're already doing those at strip malls and those little kiosks at malls. They've been doing that for years. But his heart was in the right place.
Was it though?
It was in the right place because he was just like, how many black-owned game developers and black-owned game consoles like do you know?
He
No one's
he
like,
bought
none.
bootlegs and sold bootlegs without any express.
That's why I said his
Yeah,
heart was in the right place, but he did the way he went about
I'm
it.
gonna
it's
say
like, come
his
on.
heart is not in the right place. He's looking to make a quick buck.
I don't think he was trying to make it quick.
Come
I think he was trying to
on.
do something innovative. I
No,
was thinking-
innovative. He's selling Mario Brothers.
I said he was trying. His heart was in the right place. His
No,
execution was shit, but his heart was in the right place.
I'm gonna disagree wholeheartedly on all of that.
Young Draco, do better. Do better.
Yeah, do better. Stop selling bootleg consoles, you asshat.
Because it's not like he doesn't have the money to actually open up a company where you can actually get games.
Exactly. He's looking to make another quick buck by buying bootleg consoles and selling.
That's why I
them at a
said his
premium.
execution was shit. I thought we were arguing about the 2000s. Look, I just like the song.
No, this is 2010s too.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was 2010s, and he did that in what 2018?
Yeah.
2018, 2019.
He didn't even call the Game Boy console the Soldier Boy. He just dropped so many balls in my book.
Senpai, tell us something good, please.
The 2010s, we got Shin Godzilla. It's a great movie. Shin Godzilla by the Evangelion director. Very good.
You didn't even talk Ava in the 90s.
Yeah,
You
well,
didn't.
did I need to? It's 90s one anyways.
Yeah, but if we're gonna talk good anime, then My Hero
I
Academia.
believe we get the
2010s?
rebuild Ava series in 2009.
But My Hero
Most of them
Academia is
came out in the
2010s.
10s.
The good part of Promise Neverland is in the 2010s.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So see, another reason 2020 should have lost. They screwed up Promise Neverland.
Oh, thankfully they did. I've got a pro and a con for the 2010s.
Go on.
So for the pros, we've got Akon's Lighting Africa movement.
That was dope.
That's awesome. That's really
That was
cool
dope.
for a celebrity to do. Now, the cons, Funko Pops.
You get your fucking ass out of here.
Sorry.
You have Funko Pops. You bought a bunch of them.
Jerry,
I
go
like
lay
the
down.
cons.
I learned the mistake that I made.
And what'd you do?
Not any in years.
Oh,
Jerry, don't follow. No.
no, that's
Go lay down. Go lay down. Just go lay down. You need a nap.
I don't mind having them. I just don't want any more ever.
You're bad.
I can say the same for amiibos. I don't need any more amiibos. I have too many.
You just eat your amiibos.
I stopped with Amiibo too, except I bought a couple. Like I got Piranha Plant and King K. Rool, but I'm not collecting those anymore.
Another Godzilla. We got the American Monster Verse, which is okay. They're never been as good as they could have been, but.
When did Ron Artest change his name? I think that's a funny thing that happened in the 2010s. Where's his name shit here? He also I'm just on Ron Artest Wikipedia. You can go through all sorts of fun things with Ron Artest. Started a brawl in 2004.
Yeah. Malice at the Palace, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, Dave Chappelle came back in the 2010s.
But he left in the 2000s.
Yeah, he did. But then
I think he came back a little worse, unfortunately. But
A little worse for wear.
yeah.
In 2011 is when he changed his name to Meta World Peace. Good old Ron. I don't think I could trust a man who in 4 years previously was arrested for domestic violence. And then 3 years previous to that starts a brawl with fans. So
That's just terrifying to think of. The guy that big and strong just jumping into the stands while he's ready to fucking melee your ass.
Then several years later, he's like, "Oh, I've changed my name to Meta World Peace." I'm like, "You're not the spokesman for peace, my friend."
I'll be honest. I think both of these decades suck for various reasons. So
I'm gonna go with the 2000s because I don't know. Ron Artest started a brawl in 2004.
That's a pro for you?
kind of dumb. I don't know. But then there was a hockey lockout in 2005. The NHL lockout was in. But there was a half-season lockout in 2013, which would be the
Fucking God.
2010s.
I'm going to entirely fall back on my gimmick right now and just say that the 2000s were a horrible time for Godzilla movies, so 2010.
You know what? Oh,
Both of these decades is not good for various reasons, though.
All right. I'll vote for the 2000s. 3 words only. Jackie Chan Adventures.
all right, I'm back in 2000s, baby.
Took my vote. 2000s.
Jackie Chan Adventures is all I need to hear.
Rush Hour 2? Mm.
Yeah, but Rush Hour 1 was better than Rush Hour 2. Come on now.
I don't know. I really liked Rush Hour 2.
Yeah, but Rush Hour 3 also came out in the 2000s.
No, it didn't.
Oh, is that 2010s?
That was 2010.
Oh, good. Okay, we've escaped that disaster.
We were almost hypocrites. Oh no. All right, bottom half of the first round. The 1980s against the 1920s.
Ah, the Roaring 20s.
But if you're born there, you didn't much get to.
You experienced the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, 1980s, you get the best of all worlds. You get the Turtles, the Transformers, G.I. Joe, and then you go right into all the great 90s shows.
You have Hulkamania.
Pokemon. Well, I think you were a little. If you're born in the 80s, unless you're 89, you probably escaped Pokemania.
I said Hulkamania.
Oh, Hulkamania.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was running wild in the 80s.
absolutely.
In fact, wasn't 80s a good era of wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, generally the Hulkamania era was good for business. 1984 to 1993 or so. Perfect time for being born in those areas.
What media did the 20s have? Chaplin? Silent film? Boo!
Listen, I'll tell you, there was no Godzilla in the 20s. So,
Boo! I think they need a World War II for there to be a Godzilla.
We get the start of the era of my favorite Godzilla films, and we get Biollante, who's just giant fucking plant monster, and one of my favorites. So there you go.
I'm
Fun fact.
The 80s off it.
Fun fact. Hold on, I gotta actually look up this fun fact a little more. But I think this one's easy anyways. It's the 80s.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So what did the 20s have?
The Flappers. No, the Roaring 20s. Significant wealth.
Women's right to vote.
Jim Crow laws. Lynching. Segregation.
I mean, yeah.
Well, you guys get to go and use the nice bathroom.
Jesus.
So hell yeah, I'm picking the 80s.
There you go. The fun fact that I had to look up, in The Return of Godzilla, in the American version, they added in a bunch of new scenes. Kind of like how in the original Godzilla, they added a bunch of new scenes for the American version. Anyways, the thing I was trying to remember, because I couldn't remember what brand it was, but the American Return of Godzilla is filled to the brim with Dr. Pepper ads.
I think I remember that one. Was that the one where it started off and like it was a boat and then the boat ended up getting fucked up in the beginning?
Probably. I don't remember, but probably.
I remember I had the VHS tape of that and I used to watch it daily.
Yeah. It was like supposed to be a sequel to the original It was like a reboot. So it was like, oh, this is a sequel to the original Godzilla.
And I think I remember
ignoring
because,
everything
like,
else.
Yeah, because the end he fell in a volcano. Somehow they tricked him into falling into a volcano.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Here's how I look at the 20s.
Yeah,
you're born into this era that you can't enjoy because you're so young and it's rich and the jazz age, the roaring 20s. But then it's preceded, you get to experience being born in the 20s, World War II, the Cold War, the Great Depression. Like that's what you get to experience if you're born in the 20s.
I want no parts of that.
I don't think anyone wants any part of the 20s.
No parts of that shit.
Yeah, I'll pass.
80s, baby.
80s.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming, Julian, you're 80s.
Of course. I've been saying that since the beginning. I told you my criteria.
Yeah, but I want to hear you say it.
All right, that was the quickest one. And then finally, the 1940s against the 1900s.
Look, if you're born in the 1900s, what your actual youth has to look forward to is World War One, the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Also, what fun entertainment is there to have in the 1900s? What are you gonna like?
Well,
Reading?
Boo!
You can play jacks.
yeah.
No, jazz was the 20s. That's the jazz
No,
age.
I said you
The
can play
jacks.
jacks.
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh,
Yes. Pick up sticks, baby.
You could go and like deliver newspaper for like 12 shillings, I guess. I don't know.
Yes, my 12 shillings. Hold on.
Yeah. I mean, you said you had less rights than you did in the 20s for crying out loud.
You'll read a lot more.
Sure. If you could read.
Let's see. What was going on in the 1900s? Yes, a powerful hurricane hit Texas, killing 8,000. That's what starts the decade.
God.
I
I see we're both on the same Wikipedia article.
Okay, hold on. The Tunguska event was in the. I don't even know what the fucking Tunguska event really is, other than pretty sure there's a X-Files episode named after it.
Lots of small little wars.
Did have the Wright brothers.
Yes. Air travel.
Pretty big event.
Yeah, I know.
Subtlety.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
In the 1940s, I have the next 20 years to look forward to nice suits, nice tailored suits.
Cuba gains its independence from the U.S.
Woo.
Neat.
You can watch the first Godzilla film 10 years later. That's,
Yeah.
How
Okay.
did
So
you feel about that?
we're here. We're here talking about the 1900s like it's this terrible time. 1940s, you're born into war, the Cold War, constant threat of nuclear attack through your grade school and high school days. That ain't so great either.
Then once you get old enough, you go to Korea or Vietnam and fight
You're
another
a boomer.
You're a boomer. I mean, end of the decade, sure.
Yeah.
Both these decades suck so much. I'd hate them both.
My grandma, I love my grandma and my grandfather. If you have grandparents in your life, they're probably born sometime around these decades.
Nope. My grandparents fell in between them.
Okay.
We're both born in the 40s.
Okay. I've got an answer. I'm gonna vote for the 1900s because they both suck a lot. But in the 1900s, no, because then you got World War One.
Listen, I'm gonna say I'm voting the 1900s because you don't have the Nazis. So
yeah, but then if you're born in the 1900s, you're probably being shipped off to fight the Nazis.
I would rather fight the Nazis. So
I'd rather want nothing to do with the Nazis.
listen, I would die in either regard, but
I'd rather live in the 1940s, honestly, because in the 1900s, like a cough means you're gonna die 10 days later.
Okay, I've changed my vote.
Get the coffin ready.
I've changed.
Seriously, it's so bad that if you have diarrhea, it's like, oh, that's your life. You got the squirts? Start planning your funeral now.
Is it that Dominic's life already in the 2020s? All right, I've changed my vote. I'm going the 1940s because the 40s, like, yeah, you were born into World War II and then the Korean War, Vietnam War. You have to deal with all that. But if you're born in the 1900s, you're probably still young enough to deal with all that. But you also got World War I, the Spanish flu, the Great Depression. So you've got pretty much a terrible existence.
Good point.
But you'll have the 20s.
Ah, the roaring 20s.
You actually get those benefits if you're born in the 1900s.
Ah, one good decade out of the next 7. Sounds like a fucking loss to me.
So by the 1930, if you're born in 1900s, by the time it was like 1930, all your friends are dead. Okay, I get it.
Dead or poor and wanting to be dead.
In either way, I don't even know what the next decade that's going to go up against one of these, but it's going to probably be very easy vote.
No,
So.
it's 1910s.
Oh.
So it's more garbage.
I'll vote for the 40s too. Why not?
What a gross bottom of the bracket here.
Man, I'm not even gonna lie, because like we sit here talk shit about all these decades, but I'm sure that I don't know, maybe they weren't I don't know. I can't say they were as bad. All I know is what we read.
Yeah, and what I've read from historians, which I ain't anti-history, it sounds like shit.
Alrighty, sounds like shit my stuff over here. I like it. All right, let's move on to the top. We've got our first by decade, the 1930s, going up against the 1960s. Or no, the 90s. Sorry, 30s versus 90s.
Woof.
We already
These are a bad decade.
Easy vote.
Film noirs.
To the Great Depression.
The Great Depression, when Nazis actually took power.
Nickelodeon.
World War II.
Yeah.
And then you go right from World War II into, like, the Cold War and constant threat of nuclear attack. Yeah, I'm
Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes,
Mickey Mouse.
good old Disney.
Yeah, but you got to see Mickey Mouse in Looney Tunes. You don't have a TV. You have to go to the theater, which you can't afford because it's the Great Depression.
That's why they had Nickelodeons.
Yeah, a nickel's a lot of money during the Great Depression.
Oh, in the 90s.
I'm going the 90s. Like, there's nothing good about the fucking 30s.
I'm trying to defend the 30s, but I can't find one good thing. So
like, yes, Nickelodeons. It's like that'll cost 1 nickel. It's like, oh, I don't have that.
I'm gonna go with the 90s.
Yeah,
I feel like 90s is gonna win off of bias.
Well, I like a lot of other decades.
I like the 80s, honestly.
The 90s as well. But the 30s did have Amelia Earhart.
Shit, she
went
died.
missing.
Well, before she died, she flew over the Atlantic Ocean. That's good stuff.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
good.
90s. Yeah. 90s out of the final 4. Next up, the 70s, 1970s versus the 2000s.
There's a lot of good shit that came out of the 70s and like formed a lot of what we think of today. Like music alone, I think of the 70s as like kind of the birth of modern good music. Aerosmith was big in the 70s, and I like Aerosmith, and I ain't talking about the JoJo stand.
Yeah, we found out the other day, Kelly and I, that Andy's love for Aerosmith is based on the JoJo series. It was really a wonderful thing to learn.
It was a shocking revelation.
Yeah.
Also, if you're watching JoJo, that is the dumbest stand on planet fucking Earth.
What are you talking about? It's a fucking plane. Cool.
Yeah, Aerosmith is a plane.
Yeah.
That's it. It shoots. Boom, boom.
Yeah, it's a plane that he can manifest and have it disappear whenever he wants. It's pretty good.
It's named Aerosmith.
Everything in JoJo's named after a band.
And now at this point, basically.
It was cute and funny at first, and now it's just like, ugh.
No, now it's great
with.
because we're gonna have fucking Green Day team up with Oasis later, and that's gonna be great.
The JoJo. Oh no, JoJo anime was in the 2010s. Good. I'm glad that lost.
Well.
All right, no more JoJo. We talk about the 1970s and 2000s.
Yeah, I got distracted trying to look up what I actually wanted to look up.
God, 70s though.
I think
Dragons. Or did Dungeons and Dragons come out in the 60s? I think it came out in the 70s.
I
I
actually
think it's
don't
the
know.
80s.
When
Seems
was
Seems like an
what's
80s
Stranger
thing.
Things again? So
80s.
yeah,
So
it
Dungeons
might
and
be the
Dragons started in the
70s.
No, it
80s.
is the 70s. Hot damn.
I was
Yeah.
about to say, I feel like
I think they're
RPGs,
playing second edition.
yeah, RPGs started in the 70s.
And for the 70s, Dave mentioned like, oh, that 70s show is based in the 70s. Well, also, what I would consider the predecessor to that 70s show, Happy Days, was made in the 70s about the 50s. Oh.
And listen, I don't need to reiterate, but Mecha Godzilla. Mecha Godzilla's pretty cool. He's probably in this King Kong movie, but don't know.
But then you got the 2000s where we're coming off the heels of American Godzilla. They probably had to make some good real
No, the
Godzillas.
2000s were a bad decade for Godzilla movies. They're all kind of
And they
garbage.
had the cartoon, the Godzilla cartoon.
I never watched
that
it
aired for-
actually.
Well, the Godzilla cartoon was, if we're talking about the same one from the 90s, where there was a baby Godzilla called Godzuki.
That wasn't from the 90s. That came out in the 80s.
Did it?
Yeah.
Well,
think
I
so.
remember it from the 90s. Because that's when I was born.
It might have even been the
It might have been the 70s. That seems like
70s.
It is the 70s.
Oh my
So the 70s
Yeah.
have Godzuki.
No, I just remember Godzilla's 2000. I think there was a cartoon based on that. Came out.
Yeah, there was.
Let me show you an image of that encapsulates everything that has to do with
Of
the Godzilla
Godzuki?
70s.
Hey, just the cartoon. Listen, it's the end of the Showa series, so
Look at this beautiful image right here. That's Godzuki sitting on a tree.
a lot of Mecha Godzilla actually in in the 70s.
Also, again, 70s, good Star Wars. 2000s, two-thirds of bad Star Wars. So that's a problem.
There's a lot of bad Star Wars.
Yeah. There's more bad Star Wars than there is good now.
Yeah, but 70s it contains good Star Wars.
Yes, it's true.
There's
Hey, 2000s includes KOTOR and KOTOR 2, and KOTOR 2 is the best thing Star Wars has ever put out.
What about? I thought everybody liked the Clone Wars.
That's also good. Clone Wars, I think, started
2010s,
in yeah,
I think.
should have 2000s. I think the movie
But-
came out in the 2000s.
But didn't the Gendy Tarkovsky Clone Wars come out in the 2000s?
Definitely,
Talking about
for
the
sure.
animated show.
So I
Yeah,
heard
there's two
that was
different
good.
animated. There's the Samurai Jack guy one, and then the 2008 one.
Yeah. Oh, so they
Yeah, the
all
2000
came out in the 2000s then.
Mhm,
All
mhm.
Clone Wars
But-
stuff.
But the first couple of seasons of that Clone Wars was not good, so it's more a point for the 2010s in my book.
I'm just looking at images from this.
I'm going
Godz-
1970s.
This Godzilla cartoon is just
I'm also going
outrageous.
1970s.
I'll go 2000s.
I'll go with the 70s.
Yeah, I assumed it'd be 3-1. Mine was more of a pity vote. I like both those decades, though. They got good media to look into.
All right. Next up, we've got the 1980s. They're back against the 1950s.
I just think of Little Richard during the 1950s.
First Godzilla movie, 1950s.
If you're born in the 50s, you're learning how to duck under desks when you're in grade school. I don't like that.
It's true.
Pretty sure we learned that as well, right?
No,
Briefly,
no.
I mean, we mostly went into the hallways, but I'm pretty
but that
sure
was-
I had one drill where we went under the
No.
desks.
No, that was for
That was for
tornadoes.
tornadoes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but
they're
I'm pretty
not-
sure
they're
we had a
not-
drill to go under desks at some point.
But the under the
Yeah.
desks in the 60s.
It was for the atom bomb, yeah.
Yeah.
But
And I don't think that desk is protecting them from a nuclear
oh, no.
explosion. I don't think we
I
ever
think it
had
was-
to do that.
I think it was more for falling debris than anything else. But
The roof caves in.
I
Yeah.
don't think the desk
well,
is
maybe the
stopping that
desk will
either.
help you. Maybe the desk will help. Maybe the best chance you got, I guess.
A lot of the dumbest ass tropes that I've ever seen come out of the 1950s, like jukeboxes. Or maybe that was like
Elvis Presley was 1950s too, and I don't like that. I don't like
I
that
don't
music.
like Elvis Presley. I don't like Elvis Presley.
Color TV.
But look, the 1980s had the video game crash, but then also had the video game revival.
Wait, what revived the video game crash? I forgot.
Nintendo.
See it, thank God.
By Nintendo basically saying like, no, this isn't a video game, it's a toy. See, here's Rob, he's a robot, and then they put it in the toy aisle, and then everyone bought
Yeah,
it.
I don't know how well that really worked actually, but yeah, I don't know if that
It worked.
messaging really did
I mean, it had to have done something because people bought video games.
Rob was like unpopular.
Wait,
No, Rob was popular
Question.
until they bought it.
when did the BK Kids? Was that the 90s or was that the 80s?
I don't even know. Oh, the BK, like Burger King kids?
Yeah, the BK Kids.
That's 90s. They're so extreme. How could they not be the 90s?
And movie boots, right?
Here we go. I'll pull up a picture for.
There's a tail end of the 80s and a tail in the beginning of the 90s that kind of blend
yeah, it was like
real.
It was 1989.
Oh my
Which makes
god.
perfect sense.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's
That's-
super inclusive.
I mean, yeah, this is the complete blend of the 80s and 90s. It's like the Planeteers.
Jaws. That's fucked up. Why is the paraplegic kid named Wheels? Oh my god.
That one girl named Boomer.
Yes, she is.
Lingo. Man, why is the like Hispanic guy named Lingo?
Why is the
black
dork
dude's man
IQ?
named Jaws?
Why does a dog have only initials?
Kidvid.
I hate all of them, but also.
Wait, pause. Go back. Because Jaws looks like the same dude that you see in Captain Planet.
He
Thank
looks
God.
like
Yeah.
I thought he looked kind of like Recess.
They all had the same fucking hairstyle. If you've ever
Hey,
noticed.
he's
That
Ernie
high top
Stewart.
fade.
Baseball.
I mean, this is basically Chucky Finster like at 10.
I don't think we give enough credit to the BK Kids.
What credit
I
do you
don't
want to give to
remember.
the BK kid?
Because they used to show up on VHS tapes all the time. On the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles VHS tapes, and it always make me want to get. It always make me want to get a BK Kids meal.
I don't remember.
Wait, what was it? There was a McDonald's game that was very much in vein of the BK kids. Hold on. I think this is 90s though.
My vote's easy here though, so
I mean, is it the 80s? We all going 80s here?
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Style,
Clean
music.
sweep.
All right, the 80s move on, and then finally at the bottom end of the bracket, the 1940s are back, and better than ever against our last decade, the 1910s. Ugh.
40s.
I mean,
Listen, you're talking
Fuck
the
that.
1900s for World War One, but actual World War One was 1910. So there you go.
look, if you're born in the 1910s, you're born into World War One. You have to live through the Great Depression. Also, you're probably a kid during the last pandemic. Then you go into World War II. You're probably draft eligible. Come on,
Maybe
into war.
you're on the Titanic and you die. You know.
In the 1940s, though, then you're born into World War II. You're probably drafted into Vietnam or the Korean War. You got the Cold War going on, the Bay of Pigs incident. You're ducking out. You're learning how to duck under desks to stop debris from the ceiling.
Ragtime blues was the 1910s. Hollywood was starting to become more popular in the 1910s. Look at that.
Just in time to go to the Nickelodeon for a decade before
Oh, the Oreo cookie. Ooh.
Hey.
everyone loves a good Oreo.
And the first crossword.
What's crossword, like swear?
No,
The Mona
like
Lisa was
crossword
stolen in
puzzles.
19-
Oh, cross. Sorry.
A crossword.
I found that McDonald's game. It's called Global Gladiators.
Ew.
It's definitely a product of the 90s. Here you go.
Yep, don't remember
I
this.
told you that high top fade. I told you.
They
It's
gave
probably-
Barrett it as well in Final Fantasy.
Dude. First cases of nasal damage from cocaine snorting were written in medical literature in 1910. So there was cocaine back then.
There you go.
The Handbook of Sexology in its entirety, presented by separate studies, was 1912.
Oh, 1940s here.
I ate them both. I guess I have to deal with less garbage shit if I live born in the 40s.
Yeah, you have a hope of having some fun later.
Yeah. If you're born in the 1910s, you have the 20s to look forward to and then nothing but suffering.
Well, if I'm born in the 1910s, I can grow old by the 1970s and complain about all these young whippersnappers about my young days.
How you had to walk uphill both ways in snow.
Oh, don't worry. People born in the 70s and 80s are using that now.
They are.
That's not a decade thing. That's an old person thing.
That's gonna be us in like 1 or 2 decades.
Yeah.
1 or 2 decades? I'll be 39. I will not sound like that in 1 decade.
Yes, you will.
A decade to the day, Andy's gonna say it.
I remember back 10 years ago when I had to walk uphill both ways to get to work.
No, you still have people from like who were born in the 80s talking about, I don't know what's going on with this generation. My generation's better than your generation. Like Gen Z, millennials.
But people
Gen
born in the
X
80s
still.
are millennials.
Not all of them.
Yeah, well.
No, all of them.
I
We're
thought
the
it was,
tail end of the millennial.
Well, 87, I think, is millennials. That's the
Oh, it's
start.
like 81.
86.
I think we get
Is it?
into this argument every time. It depends on where you get your definition. Some people say
81 to
81.
96.
Yeah, but it's
It's still
nebulous. It's
still
nebulous.
early
It's
80s.
still a
Oh, another reason why the 80s are great. It contains our generation.
I'll vote for the 40s as well. Yep. No, God, not the 10s.
I'll vote for the 40s. It just
40s.
makes sense. Julian, did you say 40s too?
both of them suck. So I'm just, especially for me. So I'm just gonna.
True.
I'll just, fuck. Because it's like
There's just more suffering in the 10s. You have to see that.
there's just as much suffering in the goddamn 40s.
Yeah, but you had to suffer 3 extra decades.
The only difference is there are more people who ended up going overseas in the 40s. All right, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna go 1910s. Doesn't fucking matter.
Both decades suck. How is the 40s in the final four?
All right. Top half of our final four, a little bit more normal, 90s versus 70s. That's pretty, good.
I feel like if you're born in the 70s, you're old enough to like be annoyed by all the shit that was popular in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. If you're born in the 70s, you probably don't understand the web. May or may not be a good thing, but.
Well, I'll make the argument that my parents are born before the 70s and understand the web plenty fine.
Yeah, sure, but there's some increasingly unlikely.
I'd say if you were born before like the 50s, then you probably have issues with the web. Then again, probably not. My grandmother was born before. Both my grandparents were born before 50.
Look,
I feel like anyone who's in their 50s now probably has problems with the webs.
I'm gonna try and be non-biased for the 90s though. Here.
It's hard.
It's such a cool, extreme decade.
You're old enough to remember 9/11. Unless you're at the tail end.
Good point. I do exactly remember that day.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with the 90s. It tried to be too extreme. Everything's super cringy now.
telling me that grunge isn't awesome.
Fuck, I do like grunge, so don't fucking
Exactly.
sass grunge. But
I'm not sassing grunge, but everybody sounded the goddamn looked the goddamn same during the grunge. I'm sorry.
I like that style. I like that. Well, not maybe not the style, but I like that music.
The music
Fashion.
is cool.
What I was
Anime
talking.
in the '90s was the best. I'm sorry.
No.
Ava, Cowboy Bebop.
Fuck
Man.
Ava. Ava sucked.
It did
Dragon Ball
not
Z.
suck.
Dragon Ball Z, which I know started in the 80s, was just like episodes of
Dragon
people
Ball.
screaming. No,
Dragon
Dragon Ball
Ball
was
was
all
fire.
80s. Dragon Ball Z was late 80s to 90s. And it was
Yeah.
just like episodes of screaming. It's stupid. It's terrible.
But not all of it was bad.
But Dragon Ball, Ava, those are like the big ones. Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, there's way more big ones than that, but that's just the ones I'm calling attention to. You know, on the Godzilla front, we get Space Godzilla. Not my favorite Godzilla.
Yeah, but
know, the
you also
spin-off,
get
but-
US Godzilla.
You also get Desotroya, though. Toroya, actually. Sorry,
You get the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, well, as a kid, I
Also
liked
got
it. So
Blade.
if you were born in the '90s, you would like it.
Do you like it now? You were born in the 90s.
No.
Okay. Jar
got
Jar
Blade.
Binks was invented in
Yeah,
the
you got
90s.
Blade.
Blade just came out in the '90s.
Blade's good.
Oh, the movie.
That's like the first like superhero movie that was taken seriously.
Mhm.
And look at it now. Superhero movies are pretty much all of cinema. Also,
Oh, we get Mecha King Ghidorah. That's cool.
it was around the 80s and 90s where the point of Godzilla was lost.
No, that was lost in the '70s. That was lost in the '70s. Yeah.
The actual point of what Godzilla was completely
No, that
gone.
was like sequel. Actually, that was like that was still in like the fucking '50s where it got lost with the sequel. It got lost immediately after that first movie. So
I should know more about Godzilla. I took a whole class in college about the meaning of
listen,
Godzilla.
one of the
Japanese
monsters listed here is Monster Bones of Infant Island. So listen, that was 1964. They lost the plot a long time ago, Andy.
Okay, point proven. Now he's fighting King Kong. I don't know what that represents.
Oh, that was way back then too.
That-
King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah,
Was
it's like, well, I'm not quite sure what this represents with its original meaning, but here we are.
What was Godzilla's original meaning? It was about like
it
atomic
was
warfare, right? Like that.
It was
yeah,
it was-
and the like government's ability to misuse scientific creations like for the worse. I mean, it's the atomic bomb.
Yeah, I was gonna say it had a lot to do with the
Anti-war.
atomic bomb. It also had a lot to do with Japan's isolation up
Yeah.
to a certain point.
Mhm.
Basically, they made a weapon. They made something that destroyed oxygen, but I forget what the original intent was. And so like they were trying to like, yeah, it was a mess.
And they made Godzilla, and then by its sequel, all of that was thrown the wayside
Yeah,
for
by
a
its
big
sequel,
monster fight.
he was already fighting monsters. Yeah, so
Yeah, actually, the original Godzilla, he ain't fighting no other monster. Godzilla was barely in the movie.
he was in there quite a bit. He was in there more than I think you'd think.
I haven't seen it since that college class, but what I remember is like the first half of the movie was just the threat of Godzilla.
He's in it less than you would expect by like modern standards, but he's in it more than you would actually remember. I think that's how I'd put it. Man, maybe I'm doing a best Godzilla's episode.
You are doing the best Godzilla's
I
episode.
gotta rewatch a bunch of these though. It's been too long.
There's a ton of movies for you to watch there.
Yeah,
1920s, no Godzilla, no.
no Godzilla.
I mean,
I'm going the '90s. It's biased, but
man, but the 90s got too extreme towards the end, and then you're seeing things like Quack Pack and the Mighty Ducks show up. Also, 90s had a weird thing where all their cartoons had ducks in them.
We get Pokemon in the 90s.
You had a lot of anthropomorphic shit in the 90s.
Yeah.
No,
Let's
but
be real.
ducks are the things. I'll rattle off duck shows if you want.
There's
That
a
was
lot of
also
duck shows.
80s
I never
too.
watched any of them.
You never watched DuckTales, which started in the
Nope.
80s. You never watched
Nope.
Darkwing Duck,
Darkwing Duck. Nope.
Quack
Nope.
Pack, The Mighty
Nope.
Ducks, Duckula.
Nope.
Duckula wasn't the 90s.
It might have been the 80s. No, it might fall in that gray area.
I watched like next to
crosses
no
in.
Disney Channel, so that's
You
where all
never
the
saw
duck stuff was.
You never saw the Forgotten Tiny Toons Adventure spinoff, The Plucky Duck Show?
Probably not.
There's so many ducks in the 90s.
There are a lot
Mostly
of
Disney.
ducks.
I'm pretty sure Daffy Duck got a show. I think it was Duck Dodgers got a show. So
Duck
many
Dodgers
ducks.
did get a show.
So many 90s ducks. The decade of ducks.
I'm going 90s because Sonic the Hedgehog.
There you go.
Oh fuck, I'm going 90s. That was before Sonic got weird.
That was when Michael Jaleel White
Jaleel White.
was Sonic, and that's when Sonic was cool because not only was Michael Jaleel White, I feel like he's so underrepresented because he was Steve Urkel. He taught me how to be myself, no matter who said anything about me, and he was also Sonic, and also taught me how to be cool and how to say no to strangers.
And how not to climb into a washing machine. Don't forget that one.
Not to climb into a washing machine. And he was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm going 90s for Michael Jaleel White.
Also Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for the 90s.
Yep, also Fresh Prince.
Our runner-up in best TV theme, eh, Julie?
It's,
I'll go with the 70s because you said a decade of ducks, and I'll never forget.
It's a decade of ducks. What can I say?
It is a decade of ducks.
Well, the decade of ducks.
The 70s was just a decade of Scooby clones.
Yeah, but you can't say a secade of Scoobies. It doesn't quite have the same ring because it's not a word.
I know Scooby did have a whole family though. There's Scrappy, and then he also had an aunt and an uncle.
Yeah, he had a cousin named
He had a cousin.
Scooby. He had cousin Scooby Dum. There was Yabba Dabba Doo.
Decade of Dues.
Of Doo. That might be the 80s though, with all those, which we can talk about right now.
All right, the 80s are up against the 40s in our second Final Four matchup.
Ah, yes, the decade of Doos. Scooby Doo.
1980s was definitely Nintendo.
Yeah.
It was the NES
For the
system
for the
sure.
West though, wasn't it like the end of the 80s? Like it was 85 in Japan, right? And then,
I don't know. I wasn't alive.
well, answer me. You video game.
I'm gonna fucking Google it, man. I
You
don't
said,
remember.
you video game. You video game king.
Yeah, no, 85 for us. 83 for Japan.
The Crash though, the video game Crash was in 83 in America. E.T. was a game that came out in the 80s.
Yikes.
Yeah, big yikes for the game industry. Also, they just started pumping out new Colecos and Ataris, and people are like, but I have these already. And then they crashed and burned. And then Mario came and saved the day. 80s also Ninja Turtles, both first comic book, first TV adaptation, which was
Dragon Ball.
Oh,
yeah, Dragon Ball, but then also Dragon Ball Z with all the screaming.
JoJo manga.
Oh yeah, JoJo, that's a negative.
You're just a hater.
Good. Any good Godzillas in the 80s?
No, so
There
that was
were
the start of
no-
like the reboot.
there were no good Godzillas except for like Return of Godzilla.
There was,
Oh,
there was
no,
good,
I like that era. I like
There was-
that era.
There's good Star Wars though in the 80s.
Yeah.
There's
It
also
was good stuff.
there's also like He-Man and Thundercats.
Thunder. There's also the Care Bears.
Did Different Strokes go into the
That was
80s?
70s. It did. It went into the
And
80s.
Happy Days, I think, went into the 80s. But that's when Happy Days sucked. There was good sitcoms going on then. Oh,
You
but
had all these great music stars.
didn't Full House start in the late 80s? Yuck.
Yeah.
Gross. Boo.
Full
The
House
80s
is
feels like where the sitcom got real old. Real old.
80s was not when sitcoms got real old because the 90s introduced some great sitcoms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cosby
but I feel
Show
like
was
those are
late 80s.
exceptions.
Roseanne was in the 90s.
I feel like once you introduce Full House, you're like, okay, we're at the declining sitcom at this point.
Yeah, Full House was brutal.
Full House was just, but it went on for so many seasons though.
Because people ate that shit up. I could say it's bad. It's fucking bad.
It is bad, but in hindsight, like us looking at it now, compared to what
when I was
growing up and seeing.
Look, no. We grew up through Full House. I fucking hated it as a child.
As a kid.
I know people who.
I'm born in the 80s.
I mean, 80s. Look, we've already shed on the 40s.
Yeah.
It's like you want orange chicken or this pile of shit on a dish for you. Like that's the choice that we.
I mean, to be fair, you could have just said orange chicken or Panda Express orange chicken. It's the same thing as a pile of shit on a plate.
There you go.
Orange chicken is not a pile of shit on the plate, depending on where you get it from.
I voted 80s.
I voted.
Just thinking of the dog poo match from a couple weeks ago. I'm going for the 80s also, of course.
Hey, look, 80s, 90s, the exact matchup everyone expected for the finals.
Yeah.
Well, the 40s tried. They tried their best. Yeah, the finals are the 90s versus the 80s. Bum, 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 bum.
I may be inclined to go off my 90s horse here because a lot of the shit I watched in the 90s started in the 80s. Although, I mean, Nick at Night, I was watching all the 80s, 70s, and 80s sitcoms, and then all the cartoons I watched. Like, my favorite was Ninja Turtles. That was the 80s. I had a bunch of Transformers toys. But you know what?
My favorite...
Oh, go on.
My favorite era of Godzilla might have started late 80s, but it continued on and released mostly in the 90s.
Good Star Wars in the 80s. But we didn't mention Power Rangers were the 90s.
Yeah, Power Rangers are good.
Yeah, Mystic Knights.
Beetleborgs.
Beetleborgs.
Did VR Troopers came out in the 80s, right? Like 89, 88? Or was that 90, 91?
It might have been the 90s. I don't know.
I might have to look.
Boy, here's what I'll say.
Oh, fuck, thank God. Oh, I looked up when Butt Ugly Martians came out, and it was 2001.
You escaped the Butt Ugly Martian.
3.3 on IMDb. It's a little high.
But here's what I will say is just like 80s kind of blends in the 90s, early 2000s blends very well into the 90s. Butt Ugly Martians are kind of a product of the 90s.
I feel like less so because there's such a hard cutoff at 2001. You know?
What's the...
Oh, VR Troopers came out in 94. It was from 94 to
So the 90s.
96.
So now the 90s have become a decade that I could kind of place into three things. It's either extreme, it's Ducks, or it's a Power Rangers clone.
Again, I lived in the 90s and I didn't fucking watch any Duck shows.
I rattled off a bunch of them.
I didn't watch any of them.
Nobody did.
Why didn't you like
Nobody
Disney?
watched Darkwing Duck.
I just didn't watch Disney.
I
was watching
watched
Nickelodeon and
Darkwing
Cartoon Network.
Exactly. DuckTales.
I'm not saying anything against them. I just didn't watch them. I was watching Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network instead of Disney.
I watched it all. I like Disney.
The Ducks were huge in the 90s, and y'all just sleeping on the Ducks.
I never slept on any of the Ducks.
Good.
I slept on it. I didn't say I dislike it. I just got no connection to it.
You never uttered "Let's get dangerous."
No, never, and I will not.
Why? You don't know what you're missing.
So many good shows, and so many bad ones. So many bad Duck shows.
Just wanted to highlight, how did this get to be an hour and a half?
I don't know.
Somebody talks about Duck shows no matter what the matchup is.
Only when 90s showed up.
Nope.
We spent too long on this shit years.
All right, you want to speed it up? Go on.
No,
and
at
place your
this point, it's
vote.
just his last vote. So
Yeah.
I'm going 90s. Bias be damned, I'm still going it.
God, 90. I love the 90s so much. I'm one of those asshead annoying people. Like, oh, I remember the 90s, and then I could talk about the 90s forever. Such a good decade.
I'm gonna go 80s because a lot of the stuff I like came from the 80s.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles were the 80s.
It wasn't just the Ninja Turtles.
Technically, DuckTales was the 80s. All those.
The Smurfs.
Fuck the Smurfs. You're pushing me towards the 90s now.
Good.
Okay, not the Smurfs. Shit. Damn, that was rude.
To be fair, with the sitcoms, like all the real good ones were the 70s.
You had your chance.
I'll go 90s.
All right, I'll go 80s.
Yay!
Flipping a coin.
You ruined it with ducks. You ruined the 90s with ducks, Andy. Look at you.
Okay, to change your mind, Julian, A Pup Named Scooby-Doo was the 80s, which beat Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in Best TV Theme.
When did A Pup Named Scooby-Doo come out?
80s.
I'll have to fact check you.
88.
If you're telling me that A Pup Named Scooby-Doo came out in the 80s.
Yes. Are you looking it up?
Hell yeah, I'm looking it up.
Yeah, he's right.
True. It ended in 91.
Yep. now Julian's having an internal crisis.
Is this bullshit?
Am I flipping the coin, Julian?
I'm sticking with my. I like the 80s. I'm sticking with.
Wait, hold on. Shaggy's first name is Norville?
Yeah, Norville.
What?
Did you not watch the Scooby thing for the weird bumpers thing?
I just don't remember that his name was Norville.
Norville Shaggy Rogers. I know a lot of Scooby things.
All right, so heads for the 90s, tails for the 80s.
90s win, baby.
I was
Rightfully
trying
so.
not-
Best decade, baby. You know what the best part of the 90s is? I was born.
Can I change my vote?
I'm glad you said that afterwards.
That's that strategy coming through. All right, so as most people would have predicted, we decided that the 90s were the best decade ever to be born in.
Biased.
Totally
So
biased.
biased.
It is the
Number
best
one.
decade.
80s came in second place, and then a tie between the 40s and 70s, grabbing that bronze medal.
Fucking 40s.
Yeah. So, like Dave said, we've spent close to 90 minutes on this already, so let's get this shit done. I'm Handy Dandy Andy Jarek, and for Sultan of Saganaki, Andy Mysek, for Dave the Hollow Knight Holloway, and for PB and Jules, Julian Griffin. Yeah, we're done. Goodbye. Go night.